Well, welcome, guys. Good to see you.
Man,
Thank
so
you.
excited.
You, man.
Man.
So excited.
Andrew, Ed, Franny, Martin, Scott. Man, we the kingdom. Come on. It's so good to be down here with you guys. We're actually at youth camp right now.
Oh yeah,
Yes, we are.
definitely.
Jasper,
One in
Georgia.
the country.
Young
That's
life,
right, man. This is our favorite.
You're right in the middle of the week, which is intense if anybody's ever been to youth camp. But we're here partly because, you guys are super busy. There's a lot going on. So we came to you. But I think more significantly, we're here because, man, this is kind of ground zero for the band, right?
It absolutely is.
And
sure.
we're actually in the space where some of those conversations, which I'd love to hear you guys tell the story of just kind of like the origins of the band when you guys started thinking about this, but maybe kind of lead us through a little bit. We've never actually had a chance to sit down and talk about a little bit of just, I've heard the story some, but I don't think everyone else has, but just a little bit of like how the band started. What was the conversation like when you guys were thinking it?
Were we actually staying in Timber? Or
We were in Eagle Branch.
Eagle
down the way.
Branch.
Yeah.
Okay.
So our Young Life story goes back to, I met Jesus at Young Life Camp, at a different Young Life Camp when I was 5 years old. I remember being there, hearing the gospel presentation, and my mom was like, "Hey, Scott, you just heard about Jesus. Are you interested in having Jesus in your heart?" And I was like, "Yes, ma'am, and let's go." So that's how my story started with the Lord. And Ed and I grew up with our parents being super involved with Young Life. So the idea that our band started at this camp is wild. It was 5 years ago. We were here. This camp's called Sharp Top Cove, and we were here with a group from Miami. And I had done the week, at that point, I think I had done it 8 times. And then,
Scott was in a rock band.
yep.
And his
Now I'm in another rock band. Let's go. So I had done the week 8 times, and that year, this was 2016, I just happened to ask these folks to come lead with me. And we led that year. We had a really hard year, and then we came back in 2017. And I think 2017 was the time where we were processing the difficulty of 2016. So it was even, in some ways, a lot harder. We were all pretty broken. And we were here for this same high school camp that we've done all these years. And Martin and Franny were like, "Hey, let's go down to the hot tub and write a song." I think Martin was 11 or 12 years old at the time. And I'm kidding.
Yeah,
he
right.
was in high school.
Actually, that's not too far
It's
off.
not that far, though.
He was in high school. And so he was they were like, "Hey, let's go."
Scott literally almost made me fail high school. He was like, "Get your
As a good uncle should do.
GED.
Get your GED. Let's go. It's time to play rock and roll.
I missed 40 or 50 days my senior year because of Scott.
Don't
It's a
do
good
that.
I
uncle.
graduated,
It's a good
so-
uncle there.
Pat Barrett's record.
Yeah.
He literally yanked Martin out of school so he could play on Pat's record. That was awesome.
So anyway, I remember I was really sick. I had a bad sinus infection. They were like, "Let's go write this song down to the hot tub." And I said, "No way, man. I'm going to bed." And somehow my niece and nephew convinced me to go. And so we picked up this mandolin and walked down to the hot tub. And our lives changed forever.
Wow.
For real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was crazy for me because the first song that we wrote that day, we said we wanted to write a song for these kids because, just you were here this morning, just seeing those kids, there's just something special about them. And they're just special kids, and the way that we connect with them is just really sweet. Even just hanging with them around camp, I just have a really sweet place in my heart for all of them. But their school culture, the faculty, everybody's just amazing. So we wanted to write a song and tell them how much God loved them. And it was Dancing on the Waves. That's the song that came. We threw it out as a boomerang to these kids, and it just came straight back and was the exact song that we needed to heal. And I feel like God used that song to bring us back to Him and to bring us back together after walking through that really difficult experience as family and friends. And it was, a very powerful moment. The song came in 20 minutes. And so those are the moments when sometimes you do write songs and you're in your synonyms in the rhyme dictionary or online. But this song definitely felt like it was just straight from heaven. Almost I feel like almost heaven had been singing it forever. And then God just let us have a little taste of it. It was just this really sweet moment. So I'll never forget that. We just kind of looked at each other after that and we were like, "What's going on?" We played it the next day and it was electric. So we're like, okay.
And the wild thing about that song is I don't think this band would have started if it was not for that moment and that specific song because we were all at wildly different parts of our career, of our life. And so if anyone would have gotten us together in a room and said, hey, you guys should start a band, we'd have been like, no, I don't think so.
You didn't want to be in a band with us?
Ouch.
I mean,
cool. Hey, real cool.
no, I mean, honestly.
That hurts.
We would been through so much
Personal
together.
offense.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah. And to be honest, I mean,
You're the one in a satin shirt.
hey, you know what? Yeah, I would not be wearing the satin shirt right now. If you would have given me a satin shirt 5 years ago and been like, hey, you should wear that, I'd be like,
That is the truth.
It's so true. I literally, when I met these guys, I was wearing a tank top, had long hair. I had just got in a motorcycle wreck.
And shorts.
He had red jorts on.
red jean shorts on. But yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
it's a crazy story. And so just to see the faithfulness of God in it. And to be honest, I mean, we walked through a very hard church experience with that. And so even the fact that we are in worship and music talking about God is a miracle because we had just really gotten broken.
Oh, what?
Miracle. He
says
okay.
miracle.
I say miracle. I'm from Kansas
Our
City,
song,
Missouri.
Miracle,
I love it.
Miracle Power.
Miracle
He calls
Power.
it Miracle
Yeah.
Power.
Our new song, Miracle Power.
He also calls
the Lord for America.
He also calls milk, straight up.
You know what? Is it, this all of a sudden turned into a roast.
Love you.
What happened?
Love you.
This was a deep, heartfelt moment. Wow. Yes,
What-
I would.
At what point did you guys think like, we got a song, but like, hey, is this like a band? Like, do we need to start a band? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, for me, so, Brad at Capitol and I are old friends. We've made a lot of music together through the years. And when we started getting this, notion that maybe we should do something with this, being a good friend, I knew he would shoot straight with me. I was like, bro, I need you to tell me like the straight truth. Like, talk me off a ledge here because I'm, we had this full production career going, and I really respect all the amazing clients we've gotten to work with and songwriters and just that worship all of that. And so, I really wanted to know, like, is this worth investing our time in? And I mean, you were there, right? You and Brad and maybe 10 members of the Capitol team came to our basement, and we played you guys, some songs both live in the room.
We created a lighting rig from Wayfair.com.
Yeah.
Straight
it
up.
was so
I remember that.
incredible. But, I think something happened there where the Lord was like, you know what? I'm about to do something beautiful. And he had already been fostering this relationship for so many years. And this was just taking a new turn with it, because we worked together in other capacities. So it was just so exciting to see that there was some genuine, belief in what we were doing. We really felt that from you guys, just the support. And that was a lot of fan to our flame to say, okay, let's do this, and it's just been an incredible journey.
And after we were at the hot tub, we sat by a fire like 2 weeks later and said, do we want to do this? And I think all of us knew, man, for whatever reason, like that God was blowing the wind in our sails in a different direction, and we just needed to like spread out the mast and go and see what happened, And Andrew had the name.
Oh yeah. So I had tried to start a band probably 12 years before in Kansas City, where I grew up, because I grew up in church music. I love the church, and I was praying like, okay, Lord, what should I put my energy towards? And so I kind of was praying, came up with the name We the Kingdom. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I love community. I love making music as community. And so I, try to get people involved in the band, and could not keep the band together. Every time we'd get a gig, it'd just fall apart, like someone couldn't show up. And so I got really frustrated and really disappointed, and moved on. I had the website, had a lot of socials and stuff like that for it, but just put it aside, moved on, moved to Nashville, and was like, okay, that part of my story is over. And so for me, the band is a really redeeming part of my story of like, God gives us dreams and promises, and he intends to keep them, even if it's 10 or 12 years later, and in a different way than I would think. Like, this is so much better, but so much different too than I ever imagined to be in a multi-generational band. It's beautiful. It's really, really cool.
With these idiots.
I got to share this really cool story. about that. You know, you 10 years before We the Kingdom started, you like claimed the domains online and they got the Instagram and the Facebook before like Instagram and Facebook were even really a thing, which is crazy. But right when we were putting out our first EP, which is called Live at the Wheelhouse, and the Wheelhouse is, I don't know, like a hop, skip, and a jump.
Yeah, 50 yards that way.
Yeah, you were there this morning. Literally, I can't do yards. It's like, I'm going to go with hop, skip, and a jump. So that, yeah, 50 yards down there. And that's where we recorded our first EP. So when we were like putting that out, we were like, well, we should probably have a Facebook. You know, so it's like, we'll do a Facebook. He was like, I have the name for it. One of the first songs that we put out on that EP is called Free Amen, and the scripture that it's based off of is the spirit, awesome. Where the spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. And when I, got the login, downloaded it, Facebook app on my phone, and put in the username and password, the only thing that Andrew had posted 8 years before in Kansas City was that scripture, where the spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. Isn't that crazy? Wow. So it's just kind of like those confirmation moments of being like, okay, this really is when things get hard, or when it's, when you don't know what's going to happen or whatever. It was just like, wow, that's definitely a God sign. It was really crazy. It was just cool.
This is such a full circle moment. I'm just sitting here. I'm having some revelations about how, this whole thing happened. So like Scott said, our mom and dad grew up around Young Life. I slid down one of these slides when I was 5 years old, literally. I met their mom, at a Young Life thing at high school, and I asked her on our first date.
They're still married.
Yeah, we're still married. And
it sounds like.
Yeah, I met my wife at Young Life camp at a Young Life club, and then I asked her on our first date at a Young Life camp, and then to be sitting here, and I've just thought about this. You got that domain. I can't wait to get to heaven and find out the exact timing, or maybe we could figure it out, because while he was trying to start this band with the name We the Kingdom, we were literally for a decade leading worship in this church, during that whole season. It was like God was building this story the whole time, and then he ended up coming, and so we kind of very unofficially would play and lead worship together, but never thought anything of actually starting a band. And it wasn't until God started birthing songs in our own heart. But isn't that wild to think that God was like just doing this orchestration? And you grew up in a musical home as well. It's cool how it all collides. And I'm just so thankful for the story God's weaving.
That's awesome.
What's the mission or the vision of We the Kingdom?
What did you say? I love what you said when we first started.
To me, the heart of it is, and this is what I would say, like, to believers. I wouldn't necessarily just advertise this because it feels exclusive, but I'll explain it. To me, the heart is to take people who don't know Jesus to the foot of the cross, and people who do know Jesus to the throne room of God. Wow. And I mean that in the sense that, like, I would hope that we can write songs that people who don't know the Lord can say, what is it about that song? What's the truth that song is laced with? Even if the imagery is a little more cryptic or whatever, they might be drawn to the cross, and find the answer there. And then our hope also is to take people who know the Lord to the throne room, and we can worship together. And it really is the heart of We the Kingdom, that we believe this with all our hearts, man, that it's not about the five of us, but it's us with whatever group we're with at any given night, or whatever church we're playing at, or whatever other venue we're playing at. It's really the body of Christ at large, drawing the world at large to the cross and say, hey, here is hope, here's life, here's revival for your heart that's been burnt, and then we can all worship in unison because of that.
It's been cool to see like non-believers kind of latch onto the music, because I think as writers, a lot of times, especially with that heart to reach the outsiders, outside the church, we're always thinking like, man, is this kind of language going to pinhole, us to a very specific genre or whatever that might leave out some, Jesus spoken in a lot of different languages, parables, but also sermons. And so, we just talk about that a lot. Like, are our lyrics going to hinder us from being able to reach those people? But it's cool to see like total, non-believers, even, just roughed up people, whatever, that are just human like us, kind of latch onto the music and say like, man, there's something about y'all. I don't even care about what you're talking about necessarily because they're not there yet in their journey. But I think they can just feel the passion and really excellence that we try to strive for in our music. And the Spirit of God that draws them in. We were just in New York playing a show outside on the streets, and we had people walk by on the sidewalk that just stopped. I don't even know where they were in life, and pulled out their phone or whatever, like suited up, New Yorkers on their way to work or whatever, and it was just cool to see that the Spirit of God is powerful, and the way he works through music is very powerful.
Wow. Yeah, and I see that in all the songs. I mean, I think about, as you guys were talking about that, songs like, God's So Loved and Holy Water that have really impacted the church. They've given the church voice for worship. But then there's other songs in the records that are more testimony, or Dancing on the Waves, which is God speaking over you, singing over you, or even Cages. Some of these songs that are more testimony that are reaching outside of those church walls. Which is really powerful, because it's your testimony of, hey, this is what God did for me. I don't know where you're at, but this is what God did in my life. Yeah. And so I see that definitely reflected in the music. And you guys dropped Holy Water, your first album, like right smack dab in the middle of the COVID shutdown, which would have been the worst time, to drop. You can't tour, you can't visit radio stations, all of that. Talk about that a little bit, and just that season for you guys as a band, of everything kind of putting out music, but then everything kind of shutting down and just sort of having to be in that space for like everybody else in the world.
I think in a lot of ways that was just God's specific providence for us. We all, like Andrew said, had careers going, and so when COVID happened, well, first off, we released in October of 19, I believe, was when we released Holy Water to radio. And then we went on tour with Zach Williams, and 5 days in, the world shut down. So that was early March. And we were just like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
I thought it was over, dude.
I thought
our
was
band
interesting,
was done.
though?
I'm serious. I was like, we just played our first and last 4 shows.
Well, it's crazy, though. Our album was not finished. And we were going to be doing the record on the road. Looking back, I think that would have, crushed us.
Having just made our second
record on the road.
It crushed us. It did crush us.
COVID for us, we're all family basically, and so it's like we didn't really have to quarantining meant just us getting together. We got to get in the soup together and really help form our sound. It was such a gift to have that time to really get in there and craft the art. Sometimes I'll read the Old Testament and I'll look at all these measurements for the temple. The bottom of the veil needs to be this and this. All these specific colors and dye that. And I was like, I was getting really sort of like, what is God talking about? But then I realized God is an artist, and He cares about the details. So to me, I think just for us, we care about the details. We do. We're picky, tweaky.
Yes, we do.
Very.
Yeah. So, but it gave us the luxury to help refine the sound, and
I think real quick, the heart behind that is to inspire God's community and God's people to just set a standard of excellence. We talk a lot about just because, I was talking with a buddy, and it's like if you go see a Christian movie or whatever, people kind of say like, it was pretty good for a Christian movie. There's always that like tag at the end.
Disclaimer.
Like somehow we got this disclaimer, whatever. So we really strive, to dig into the details, not to make us look good and professional, whatever, but to inspire people that like, this can be done well. And it's not to make your church look good or your brand look good, but to make God's music and God's heart clear and be the best. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I would say too, Jimmy, from that was on the music side on the fan side of being able to make music in COVID. From what we've heard from people that connected with our music, they were thankful that you drew near during a traumatic time. And I think it just taught me that like people don't want you to retreat when things get hard. Like people want you to step up to the plate and help. And I think that I'm very grateful that we were able to do that. Honestly, we were doing it because we needed to put out a record, but then I learned that lesson later of like, when things get hard, people want you to say something. People need you to, reach out a helping hand or whatever. And I think that our music, as well as a lot of the other artists that put out songs during that time, became an anchor for people. And that was just like such an overwhelming gift and blessing to be able to do that, and to give people those songs to help them, because I just think about like all of the songs and music that has gotten me through some incredibly difficult times in my life, and then to be able to have our first album be that for people during a global trauma was really cool to hear the stories. I mean, it's been really, really sweet, and I'm very grateful.
Well, you had so much excitement, success around that first record. Going into the second record, did you feel pressure?
No.
Dude, it was honestly
Hard yes.
It was pretty terrifying in a lot of ways. I mean, I've wrestled with. I think I can say this honestly. I think I've wrestled with as much fear about our second record as I have maybe any other like endeavor in my life. There are other things in my life that I've wrestled with it, but as far as like a creative endeavor or a ministry endeavor or a job, vocational endeavor, it has been hard, man, just to dive in and to unpack a couple years of grueling touring and how do we like, we had gone through this really hard church experience, so we had so many songs in us that we were just processing. Mm-hmm. They were just cathartic releases, man. They were just like, melodic representations of the confusions and questions and answers that we were receiving in our hearts at the time. And so I think for us to go into the second record to figure out who are we, what do we want to say right now, what do we need to say right now, both to ourselves and to people around us, and how do we continue on the journey of writing songs that are honest and vulnerable when we might feel kind of numb. I think when we wrote the first record, we didn't feel numb. We had a lot of emotions and we were in touch with them. And I think when we worked on the second record, there was a little bit of a numbness from just the grueling nature of being on the road, And so I think figuring that out's been a challenge.
I think you see that a lot in the church too, with miracles and God showing up in people's life. There's always a question like, can he do it again? And I think in my mind, I've always thought that he has like a miracle capacity. Like his power is kind of, you can either have it spread out and have little miracles, or if you have this big thing happen, then you're kind of like, oh gosh, I better, play my life safe, because if something happens, he already did this one thing. So I don't know if he's the kind of God that'll be willing to use that much, power to do it again, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I think that played into the record of it, almost a teasing, the success of the first record. We just fought that fear and intimidation, like, Lord, can you do this again? Because it's going to take you. Our human power cannot take us that far. You can sit in the studio all you want and literally kill yourself, with just how many hours you're spending and whatever, to an unhealthy degree. But I think we hit several moments where, like, Lord, you're the one that is going to have to carry this,
For sure.
Yeah. And Ed, I know, you're number one. I know your perfection. Like, you drive for perfection. But there had to be questions, right? Even creativity of just the wondering of like, do we have 12 songs in us? Do we have, that well of creativity to go back and do this again and match and exceed what we created the first time?
Yeah, I mean, I think human nature, having made so many records throughout my life for other artists, man, when it's your own thing, like seeing the ball is just trickier. It just is. There are times where I feel like where like the wind's blowing and sand's blowing and everywhere. I'm like, I can't even see 5 feet in front of me. It's hard to have the perspective. That's one thing I've really been thankful for as a producer, like, is being able to think on a 30,000 foot level and being able to hear the heart of songs when you're writing them all yourself and working together. And these guys are all just ridiculous writers and producers. So doing it together has been a real beautiful thing, because I feel like we kind of locked arms together and we're like, okay, we're climbing this mountain together. We rise together, we fall together, let's go. And I'm really proud of us. I mean, I feel like we did the best we could.
Yeah.
You know, we laid it down, we prayed, we asked God to be there and gave it to him. It's like, you know, at the end of the day, it's like we can plant the seed, but the Lord brings the harvest.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
And I just feel like we're like, okay, Jesus, do with this what you will. And, you know, the world likes to use different things for measurements of success. But to me, I feel like ultimately success is, have we surrendered this to the Lord, invited him into it? And I really believe we did. And at the end of that, it's like, okay, this is yours. Have at it, and we'll be faithful to carry it best we can.
There's always a comparison to, I remember, you know, several times, like, do we have the holy water? Do we have the God so love? You know what I mean? Where you're kind of drawing from old wells of creativity or whatever. I think that's a life thing.
That's
you know,
good.
where you go back to the well that he dug yesterday or last year.
Wow.
Because it's hard to believe for the new one, you know, like, you know that water is in that old one.
Literally.
Yeah.
Is the name of the
Holy
song.
water, yeah. But, you know, you don't necessarily know that, you know, even digging a well, literally, it's like a money risk, you know, like if someone's going to dig a well, you're not guaranteed that there's water there. So I think just walking that out, it was tough, man. We referenced the old album a lot, probably too much.
I was like,
Yeah.
what if we don't have another song like Holy Water? Because
Yeah.
that song really opened the door. And then, you know what? I came home from the studio one night, and my wife was like, hey, how'd it go today? I said, I feel like I'm looking through a kaleidoscope, and I can't, and there's just a bunch of shapes, and I don't know if we had an amazing day, whatever. And I remember her saying to me, like, hey, you guys have, like, kind of like Ed just said, you've given everything you have to this record. And because of the lack of clarity that you have on it, only God will receive the glory from it, because you didn't have perspective. And that's at this season in your life, it's a really beautiful thing that y'all have not had perspective. And that really hit me hard, you know? And I'm grateful for that. And like Ed said, I think we gave it all we had, man. And God does the rest.
Yeah.
Like, it's in his hands. But
Well,
we're stoked about it.
It's an incredible record. Congratulations. I've gotten to hear it. No one else has gotten to hear it yet, but I'm excited. I can't wait for everyone to be able to hear these songs. And they're amazing. Like, you guys have, and it's right. It's not a recap of record one. This is like new ground for We the Kingdom. And it's fresh, it's brilliant, it's lyrically, you know, deep, and, you know, all the things that I love about what you guys do. Do you guys have favorites from the new music? Let's start with Andrew.
I mean, I love the song Jesus Does. And it kind of, it took a long time to come to write. It's so interesting. Holy Water just happened in a day and a half, which makes it feel very unachievable to do again. Because if it's like, well, if a song doesn't happen that fast and that immediate again, maybe we can't write a good song. But this one, we really dug into it for, I don't know, was it 2 years, 3 years?
At least 3 years.
3 years, yeah.
Wow.
But I am so proud of where it landed and so thankful for it. And I really pray that God uses it to bless the church and to bless people.
Wow. Yeah, what about you?
I love Left It in the Water. I mean,
Come on, man.
man, I love playing that song. And I love, even though it's just fun, high energy, just party, I love the theology in it. You know, that bridge, you know, I am born again. I have been made whole. Nothing but the blood washing over my soul. Glory, hallelujah. You know, let this signify all that you have done for me. Now I got to testify. Yeah, I got to testify, and then there's a guitar solo to testify
That's the
about,
testimony.
you know, about getting dunked. But I mean, it's just
Dunked?
it's awesome. You know, it really actually challenged us to look at the Word and really study the different ways that people believe. And baptism can actually be a pretty divisive thing, I think, sometimes in the way that different Christian communities see that. But the ultimate thing is that Jesus is the one who has washed us from our sins.
Wow.
And just to remember that. And so when we talk about leaving it in the water, it's a symbolism of just the incredible work of the cross.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that song is a sleeper church song. It's aggressive.
Let's go.
It's aggressive, but what it says, and I just know, like, there's things that I want to say in church to people, and testimony songs are really powerful. You know, we don't do testimony services anymore like in the old days. People would, remember that you'd go on a Sunday night or something like that and be like, hey, we're having testimony. People would just stand up and say, hey, this is what the Lord did in my life. And it's powerful. You can't argue with that because it's somebody's testimony. And that's what I love about that song. It's like, man, this is like what God has set me free from. This is what God's doing in my life. Yeah. So we'll watch it, Ed, together.
I
we'll
want to go to the church that plays that.
Franny, what about you?
That was awesome. My favorite right now, I mean, it changes because I really do love this record, it was cool to get in the car one day, drive home and turn it on and listen and be like, man, like, I like this. And like, that was just a cool thing for me to be like, it's good when you like your own songs. I really love God is on the Throne right now. We're getting ready to record a video for it, and I have a bunch of my friends coming to be a part of it. We're filming at my house, which is going to be really fun. So just because that's where it started. I started with some really good friends of mine like 2 years ago, and then just kind of like kept it in our, what's the word? Arsenal. Yeah. Definitely that. So
your vault of songs.
Yeah, the vault. Yeah. So we would just like play in sound checks, and then we were in a radio interview last fall, and I think Scott asked him, the man he was interviewing us, what people needed to hear right now, like people that he's connecting with every day on the radio, and he said people just need to know that God is on the throne. And I mean, it's just like, I feel like that song for me has really, I can get really overwhelmed, really anxious, really in my head, very easily. And so that song just helps me put my feet back on the ground. So it's yeah, I'm thankful for it. It was the first time that we collaborated with other musicians in We the Kingdom. And I feel like they brought a different flavor out of us. And it's part of our vision behind We the Kingdom, all of us coming together, and each person carries such a beautiful piece of the image of God that sometimes what's dangerous in anywhere, but I see this in the church, and it especially confuses me, is when one person gets elevated too much. You're like, every person carries that special piece of the image of God that if you take anyone away or elevate one too much, then you're missing out, on who God is. So I'm excited about this song. I think it's going to be really, really fun.
Martin, from the drummer standpoint, what do you like?
We have a song called Life is Good that I freaking love it because it reminds me of being a kid. And I think it's important to sow into your inner child, which is not something that I'm really good at. It's hard for me to, take things lightheartedly, I think I've always kind of been 10 years ahead in my mind and thinking like you got to have everything under control and be mature and whatever. But it's kind of like you just feel like a fool when you're like listening to it and playing it in a childlike way, Reminds you of being young. And it reminds you, man, that because God created life, that's why it's good. Not because of how you're feeling or, even if you like job promotion or things that are actually going well. It has nothing to do with the fact that life is good. It's because he created it. Wow. And the gift giver is good, at his essence. So I'm excited about, I don't know what'll happen with that song. I don't know. I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah. Scott?
So playing Left It in the Water live is just out of control fun.
It's only because he plays a flying V guitar.
Yeah, I did.
Do you really?
Yes. Oh yeah. 100%.
Do you wear the black boots with the chain on them when you play the V?
No. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I did.
Yes.
I'm excited about the flying V. Ed gave it to me for my 40th birthday. We were about to play.
That's a great brother.
We were about to play at a festival, and our stage manager was like, I had my guitar on. We were walking out on stage. He's like, dude, let me see your guitar. I was like, bro, we're playing in 30 seconds. No, I gotta keep my guitar. He's like, I gotta fix something. And he took my Gibson 335, and he comes back and hands me this flying V. And it was my birthday present from Ed, and it's like my favorite guitar I've ever owned. It's incredible, dude.
It just happened. We happened to.
So I love playing Left It in the Water, but I think I would say right now, because of the way it's challenged my heart, Miracle Power is really hitting me hard because, man, it was a hard song for us to write because we've been specifically in a church circle where we were taught that if you don't get your miracle, it's because if you have a lack of faith. There's something wrong with you if you don't see the movement of the Holy Spirit instantaneously. And I think I can say personally, I bought into that for a long time, you know? And then I've been in other circles where it's kind of taught that miracles don't exist anymore. And I think both of those are wrong, man. And I think that song for us was a real challenge to say, how do we write something that is theologically accurate and pastorally relevant that talks about miracles? And it took us a long time, man. I mean, kind of like Jesus does, that song. Miracle Power, honestly.
We had arguments.
Yeah.
Like theological.
We did.
Yeah.
Like working it out together.
Yeah.
The second verse.
Calling pastors, calling different.
Yeah, we called pastors, said, "Hey, is this right?" So, man, I'm proud of that song because I feel like I can say unequivocally that I believe what it's saying. And I believe that God is a God who performs miracles. And I believe that sometimes he does it through a moment where he does something really beautiful. And I've seen that happen, man, in beautiful ways. But I think probably more often the miracle is God's pastoral heart as a father shepherding us through the real crap in life and the real struggle, you know. And honestly, as I look back at the hardest seasons of my life, I much prefer the miracle he's done while I've been dragging a stick through the mud trying to figure out what's next over the times when he's done something quickly, because that's what's changed me, you know. Because it's one thing to be in awe of God's majesty and his capability. It's another to have a relationship. And I think that relationship is fostered through the battles that we face. So I'm loving playing that song right now.
Wow, that's so good. Well, thank you for sitting down and talking with me today. I know you guys are incredibly busy. There's a whole slew of students about waiting for you guys to come and lead the worship in just a minute.
You've got your solo.
That's true. I got a solo, and there's apparently there's a magic trick tonight.
Yes, there is.
Okay. You know.
We love these kids, man. They're amazing.
Well, it's a joy. I love you guys. Thanks so much for sitting down, and it's been great. Thank you so
Jimmy.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks for all
Thank you.
y'all
Thank you
do.
for having us.